Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer and welcome to the breaking news. Today's breaking news is that the president of Poland, Andrzej Duda, has declared that the United States may possibly start to house nuclear weapons within the Republic of Poland, and we've also been able to hear that apparently these negotiations have been going on for months and may be reaching some sort of an inevitable end where nuclear weapons are actually stationed inside of Poland. This is an incredibly large escalation as we are starting to hear that once again the Polish are fearful of the Russian militarization of Kaliningrad as well as the movement of Russian nuclear weapons into Belarus, that they are on the very cusp, the very front line of a conventional war, a third world war that may happen in the future if tensions continue to rise and Russian ambitions move on outside of Ukraine and on into Eastern Europe as a whole. We can hear that apparently Duda wants these nuclear weapons inside of Poland so that way the Russians are scared of taking direct action against the Republic of Poland, and not only that, he wants to make sure that if anything was to happen, Poland has a shield of protection over it, the largest and most powerful shield that the world can provide, which is through nuclear weapons, so that way they can try and counter any Russian actions that may occur near the Suwalki Gap, or even a larger armed push from Kaliningrad and on into the heart of Poland, near to the area of Warsaw, or even further on into Poznan area. This is something that, once again, is incredibly concerning, and we have heard that Moscow cautioning of security measures if Poland proceeds with hosting these nuclear weapons, reacting to the ongoing discussions with the United States. It already appears that the Russians are incredibly concerned and very frightful, or very scared more so, of what may happen because of these nuclear weapon movements that may potentially be happening very close in the near future from the United States into Poland, and it is showing that the Russians are still wildly scared of a Western response, or even a Western matching of Russian aggression, considering that the Russians have put nuclear weapons into Belarus. The United States putting their nuclear weapons into Poland would be an almost a complete equal step in escalation that the Russians have already conducted. This is something that is incredibly concerning and is a very severe thing to talk about, is the constant nuclear escalation within the region. Of course, nuclear weapons aren't flying, but the fact that these nuclear weapons are starting to move closer and closer to the countries that both sides may be possibly going to war with, this is once again showing that nuclear war is at least a little more closer on the horizon now than it has been over the past few decades. I also wanted to tell y'all how I learned about this news so quickly. I actually got notified on my phone about this huge story using Ground News. They combine stories and articles from thousands of outlets, local and national, in one place so readers can get all sides of the story about what's being reported around the world. There are several features that Ground News has to offer. For example, they can provide a visual breakdown for each source. Ground News gives you information about the source, including their political bias, a rating of the source's factuality, and information about who owns the source, which may affect the quality of their reporting. They also give you the ability to organize news by category. For example, if you're looking for Ukraine news only, you can type that in and it will provide you with a dedicated news section about Ukraine. They also have a section called the blind spot feed, which presents articles that might have been over or underreported, which can create information bias due to the nature of the source's political leaning. This feature ensures that you get a balanced view of the news. I believe that Ground News allows you to become a smarter news consumer by being able to see through bias, and this will allow you to make informed decisions about the world around you. I personally use it all the time, and I think you'll find it really useful as well. To make sure that you never miss an update, go to ground.news/enforcer to give it a try. If you sign up through my link, you'll get 40% off of the Vantage plan, which is what I use to get unlimited access to all of my features. I think Ground News is doing important work, and I hope you'll check them out. Thank you to Ground News for sponsoring this video. And with that, we're going to be moving on into our next bit of news, further on up and into the area of Denmark, as we've gotten amazing, unbelievable news that Denmark will provide all of its F-16s to Ukraine. This is huge, as this was announced by the Danish ambassador to Ukraine, Ole Egberg Mikkelsen, in an interview with the program We Are Ukraine. Apparently, they are going to be providing all of their F-16s because they're planning on getting F-35s in the future. Therefore, the F-16s are no longer necessary to keep any kind of power projection for the Danish Air Force, and so instead of keeping these aging F-16s, they're instead going to be providing them to Ukraine. The kind of benefits that can be provided by F-16s in Ukraine in such large numbers cannot be understated, as Denmark does have a fairly decent amount of F-16s inside of its roster. According to information that we are able to find online, the Danish have 30 F-16 Fighting Falcons alone. On top of the ones that are being sent by the Netherlands, this means that Ukraine will have somewhere in the 40s as far as their F-16 aircraft go. This is huge and will once again be helping out the Ukrainians massively with power projection abilities, and not only that, their ability to conduct strikes against Russian armed forces, and not only that, Russian air defense sites which protect the forces on the ground from incoming air attacks. This is unbelievably huge, and once again is showing us that the West is very adamant on helping Ukraine to try and keep this war effort going and hopefully end up winning it in the long run. Meanwhile, inside of Russia, we have been able to see that a major Russian warehouse within Moscow has caught on fire. We don't really know what has caught on fire, but we do know that the fire had spread through about 3,000 square meters of ground. And we can see the fire raging right there. We are still trying to assess whether this will have a major impact on the war effort or not, as we do not know what that warehouse was actually storing when this video was made, but nevertheless, hopefully the damage will be severe to the Russian war effort, or at least damage or cripple some of the Russian forces and their logistical abilities. Meanwhile, within the town of Voronezh, another major fire happened, this one actually being Ukrainian created. It was a fire on an electromechanical plant, the Nukes 5, which is on fire inside the Russian city of Voronezh. Here are some of the clips showing the fire.
Все, пизда. Складу нашему пизда. Пизда всему.
And we see toxic smoke billowing out of the building as the fire begins to ravage the entire assembly hall of the factory. We can also see this fire from a distance in this video. And then finally in this last video, we can once again see the plumes of smoke billowing out of the building as the fire continues. We can see it from inside of a car right here, as they are hitting the absolute sickest of beats. And we now see the driver intelligently driving into the smoke. But nevertheless, the Voronezh electromechanical plant specializes in the supply of electric motors, electric generators, transformers, and drive equipment. Meaning that a lot of these systems may actually end up being used in the Russian-Ukrainian war, and so the knocking out of this factory through this large fire will most likely be helping out the Ukrainians on making sure that Russian reinforcements of vehicles and other kinds of equipment similar to that will be a lot more difficult going on into the future. We've also been able to see the massive fire in this other clip, which is our backups right here, but they're largely the same, so not really a good point in showing them here on stream, well, here on the video, but maybe on the stream tomorrow. Moving on from that and up into the area of Kurgan, we've also been able to hear that due to the massive floods that are being created inside of the central area of Siberia, we've now heard that a large mine shaft used to mine radioactive materials inside the Russian Federation has now been flooded, and the local rivers may be filled with radioactive contaminants within days or even within hours. Here is the clip of the area around the uranium mine shaft, showing that it's completely covered over.
Все, кошмар, просто кошмар. Тут вот через дорогу вот прет вода. Во. Просто жесть. Жилет.
We see the water just flooding over. We don't know how much of it's filled with radioactive contaminants. But this is still something quite concerning.
И туда сколько горизонт видно, все там вода. Все.
Now, we don't know how much radioactive contaminants are getting in the water. We do know that it has flooded a uranium mine, well, a former uranium mine that still probably has uranium deposits inside of it. Let me know in the comments section below, how much damage do you think that's really going to do to the local ecosystem? Do you think it's going to be minor traces of radiation throughout the area, or do you think it's going to start getting severely radiated and may actually cause damage to local wildlife and also local flora and fauna? But moving on from that, we're going to be getting on into the area of Ukraine itself, because we've also been getting some major news today that additional Department of Defense personnel from the United States of America may be sent to the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv to serve as advisors and more so, the best way to describe it really is just military advisors to the Ukrainian government, according to information that we're getting today. This is a very big thing, as once again it is showing that the United States is trying to get a lot more involved in Ukrainian decision-making, or at least ensure that Ukrainian decision-making is more along the lines of a Western doctrinal form instead of one of the Soviet doctrinal form, which we saw used last summer during the summer offensive of 2023, and it appears that it did not go that well, near to the direction of Rabotny, as the Ukrainians ditched the Western military doctrines and ended up adopting the Soviet-style doctrine, and it appears that their results were minimal at best. Moving on from that bit of news and on up into the area around our location unknowns, we were also able to see a brand new kind of a Ukrainian assault drone. This assault drone is fairly interesting, as it has an NSV machine gun and two RPG-7s mounted to it, meaning that it can provide a little bit of machine gun suppressing fire, and not only that, a little bit of that high explosive suppressing fire as well. This is largely based on the same chassis of the usual unmanned machine gun vehicle that we've seen in the past, but it is mounting some RPGs to the side, which does increase the firepower a pretty good bit. We see them continuing to show different panning shots of the vehicle, and now we can see it finally being tested, firing off RPGs right here. And we can actually see that it's an incredibly stable platform, not tipping around at all. It appears to be well balanced, and we can now see the vehicle on the move. We now see it coming to a stop. And it looks like the machine gun may be firing. We can't really tell. There's not any audio with this video, but nevertheless showing us, here we go, there's the machine gun firing. But this is showing us how these new drones are going to be working, and once again, drones like these can massively help out infantry squads in the field. These RPG rounds that can be fired, along with the machine gun suppressing fire, will help infantry to advance without putting any infantrymen in harm's way, to be able to get an advantageous position with this drone, its machine gun, and its RPGs that are mounted on top. An incredible innovation by Ukrainian forces. In the meantime, today we did see that a Russian missile ended up hitting the Kharkiv TV tower and splitting it in two. This footage right here catching it halfway during its collapse. And there's the collapse of the TV tower right there. Pretty crazy to see. We do understand that the TV tower has practically been completely knocked out at the moment, and mostly will not be rebuilt until the end of the war. It's wild to see that the Russians will attack critical infrastructures such as that, and that is once again why it is so imperative for U.S. support to make it on its way into Ukraine, so that way air defense can provide a shield around cities like Kharkiv and stop things like this happening from inside Kharkiv again, and from around the rest of the country throughout the remainder of the Ukraine war. But nevertheless, we also have a little bit of additional news from the Middle East. While we haven't really talked about this much, as the situation has been dying down and getting a little bit more quiet, at least in recent days inside the Middle East, we did see that Hezbollah did conduct rocket launches into the area of northern Israel, and 30 rockets ended up impacting Israeli land. We can actually see some of the smoke rising from some of these impacts right here, and showing us that things are not entirely quiet in the region, but they are starting to head a little bit more that way, as official actions in between the State of Israel and the Islamic Republic of Iran have seriously died down over recent times. But with that, that is all of the major breaking news that we have at the moment. I have to thank everyone so much once again for watching. Thank you all. It means a lot to us that everyone continues to watch these short war summaries that we make. And if you really did enjoy, make sure to subscribe. It makes us very happy to see that. And also like and comment this video, as it does help us out a little bit in the algorithms, but not by that much. But still, beyond that, thank you all so much once again for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.